both the last two shows, I forgot to read Ezekiel Kralen's story. And so I made a point of putting it into the show file as quickly as I got it to make sure that I didn't make that mistake again. This is titled A Good Day for Pitching a Tent, Ezekiel Kralen wrote. It looks like the ATM depot is no longer a good place for the pups and myself anymore due to a recent arrival of rather crude indigents taking over. They've made it their home, and they're almost 24/7. It's not that peaceful, especially after nightfall, and quite filthy and littered with their debris. One screams a lot and harasses pedestrians. Another speaks loud, foul, violent language in his dream state, no doubt meth-induced. Plus, it's lit up all night long, which I find disruptive to a restful state. Camping out by the bus stop yesterday was not at all serene this time around. The pups were constantly on the alert to protect their turf, barking at more than half the dogs that walked by with their owners. Then there were so many skateboarders. You wouldn't believe. There was a motorcycle parked 4 feet away from us when we arrived, and about 2 hours later the rider returned decked out in biker apparel, including a helmet with a mirror visor, so I couldn't see his face. Instead of first pulling back to the corner, he revved up the engine with its raucous vroom, vroom, right in my face, which of course roused the hounds to full barking mode. I think the biker did that intentionally because an easy excuse to harass the houseless. The bus stop's usually not such a disruptive location to sit the dogs. It's often quite pleasant, but yesterday was not one of those days. So around 6 p.m., and Deke had yet to return, I declared to set up my tent for the first time in back of the building, even though the SFPD had driven a few homeless people away from that spot earlier today. Deke might be enraged upon his return to see us there, but I figured since the ATM depot was already flush with vagrants once more, the pups would be safer in a tent around the corner. I actually prefer to set the dogs away from all the foot traffic and disturbances typical of a busy street like Market. The doggies rest better, and I can work on my Chromebook, and I can also take them for their little poopy walks on that same block or right across the street where I can keep an eye on my tent and Deke's shopping cart. The tent is a Teton 2-person pop-up, high quality, and repels even heavy downpours, exactly what the doctor ordered as we enter the rainy season. Some crazy shit happened while camped out there, but it was otherwise a pleasant evening. Such as when I lay down with the canines, my shod feet poked through the tent's flap. This may cause some people walking by to think I'm available for conversating, like what happened a couple hours into my dog sitting last night. Is anybody home? Somebody called within a few feet from the tent. Hey, anybody home? I sat up then and pulled open the fly to see a semi-grubby fellow with a large shock of frizzy brown hair. I said, yeah, what's up? At which point Flacco and Lucky poked their noses out and began barking furiously as I held them back with one crooked arm. He replied, do you have a pedal wrench from my bicycle I could borrow? Oh, geez, Louise, I thought, disrupting me and the hounds over that. Can't he see the tent is closed and I shouldn't be disturbed? I could have been asleep. Though I wasn't. That's no one's business. But you can see, Watson, how my sense of being truly hobo has kicked in. Some veritable stranger had trespassed on my transitory turf that was all mine tonight. I sat up and stuck my head out, told him while struggling to restrain the quasi-dachshunds. Quasi-dachshunds? No, I don't. Sorry. Oh, okay, he replied while eyeing the furry quadrupeds. Apologies for interrupting your peace. Then off he went back into the damp night like a spectre floating away in the fog. The dogs then returned to the quilted mattress cover I found in a free box 2 weeks back and used that for their blanket, fluffing it up with great vigor as doggies do, and is so fun to watch, pulling and adjusting with tooth and paw and an occasional growl of, no, that's not quite right, frustration, before rearranging it to their satisfaction and plunking themselves back down into their cozy nest. Lucky rested against the far side of the tent while Flacco nuzzled up beside me and licked my face and ears clean, because that is what doggy love is all about. A cool, pleasant breeze wafted through the ventilated tent as I massaged her shoulders and stroked her floppy ears and neck, then reached out to scritch Lucky's little forehead and grasp one of his chunky forepaws in friendship. About an hour later, some scrappy Chicano dude asked if I'd like to buy some. Insert a list here of various illegal drugs, he rolled off his tongue. I shook my head. Nah, but thanks. Upon which the dogs burst from the tent, yanked the shopping cart I thought was firmly lodged in place by a construction sign on a folding metal stand I'd set in front of it, but the cart swayed to one side, causing it to push the sign away and start rolling down the hill, and the dogs with it, because leashed to the bottom rail of the cart near the back wheels. So I maniacally dashed through the tent flap, grabbed the cart, pulled it backwards to its original station. There was also a tall blonde dude standing around who came out of nowhere like everyone else, I suppose, behind the tent and rattling on about the meaninglessness of life. Now, how becoming homeless was the best thing that ever happened to him, since it finally put real purpose in his world, which he never had before. He wore a loose-knit blue and purple sweater depicting silver bolts of lightning on the front. Striking. Neither fellow helped me with the cart and sign, damn it, and I struggled to put everything back in place with the dog still tethered and unharmed, though the Chicano skittered off once the dogs and cart started chasing him. The blond fellow remained, glad to engage me in badinage, for he did talk up a storm about this corrupt society, so like Nazi Germany, and how the pursuit of happiness is a farce. But he's happy and even proud in his outrage, always ready to rumble for any demonstration that fights for the people. I found his spirited philippic a delight, along with his comely appearance, frowning mug, thick golden mane of curly shocks, and a nicely formed body like a vision of Helios. But a 72-year-old gay codger like myself must suppress the excessive drool gushing from his saliva. A 72-year-old gay codger like myself must suppress the excessive drool gushing from his saliva glands back down the gullet, lest he be declared a dirty old coot. So no, don't even entertain the notion that this vibrant scenario will lead to a passionate tryst in my tent as you scroll down the page, dear reader. Perish the thought. Jack off now, please. Get it out of your system. I'd never invite a stranger into my abode, whether it be for the moment when I'm guarding the Brindlekin. He amazed me with his social critique because it parallels the very things I have issues with and discuss now and then in my tales. You remind me of a character out of Allen Ginsberg's poem Howl, I declared as he paused for breath. I was thinking here of the opening stanza, quote, I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn, looking for an angry fix, angel-headed hipsters burning for the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo in the machinery of night. I figured he knew what passage I was referring to, so I didn't bother to explain or quote anything further from that seminal poem that rang in a new age, which is about to really take off like gangbusters. The event will be like a scimitar slicing through history and change everything. I also told him, you clearly have all your ducks in a row, though I'm sure the average doofus believes otherwise, but that's just the way it goes. Aren't you friends with that guy they call Po' Boy? He quizzed me. Yes, that's his street moniker, I explained, but I know him by his birth name, Deke. I watch his dogs for him whenever he needs to run errands without them slowing him down or just wants a break to ride his bike through the city. He thanked me for talking with him, then apologized for the disruption of my dogs and the shopping cart and not bothering to help me. He was just too caught up in his own reveries. No problem, I assured him. I enjoyed the conversation, too. Is there a way I can say God bless you if you prefer some other word than God? Oh, well, God is perfectly fine with me, he replied. After all, something glues everything together in the universe. I actually prefer the term universal mind or the Great Spirit, confessed this lost pilgrim. And upon that note, the dapper trickster took off for parts elsewhere. Said he might drop by again later. He did not, but I have a feeling we'll soon meet again, seeing as he'll probably seek me out another evening where I set up camp with the mongrels. My tent is easy to spot. I then returned back inside the tent after such an explosive interruption. The dogs wagged their tails, and I hugged and scritched their bellies both, so glad to have this little family of two sweet souls under my wing, or should I say my tent flap. For another hour or so I sat up with the Chromebook in my lap, typing out the first part of this piece. I had no internet last night, which got me to focus on my writing. Deke didn't show up until 11:30 p.m. "Where'd you go, to the moon?" I greeted him the moment I emerged from my pod. He didn't comment on that, but just plopped himself on a sheet of cardboard, pulled his socks down, and started scratching his ankles like crazy, unbelievably crazy. I bet he picked up chiggers, fleas, lice, or Aries forbid scabies on some clothing he found while rummaging the streets, though that possibility was never discussed. I didn't even comment on his itchy shanks, so just a conjecture on my part. He was in the company of a short, robust fellow named Tico. He extended a hand to me in greeting, which was nice, but he was too far gone on his meth spree for me to bother with, because pesky, though harmless. I needed to focus on knocking down my tent as soon as possible, as I was eager to call it a night and return hovel. So I first cleared out my tent of the mattress cover, spare jacket, my backpack containing the Chromebook, and 2 dogs whose leashes I tethered to their master's bike lying down by the curb, distant enough so they wouldn't try to get back inside the tent during its disassembly. Problem knocking down the tent turned out to be a tiny latch you just press down, and voila, the whole shebang collapses. But for a few moments there my heart sank at the thought of a broken frame, which would make the tent useless, and I'd have to discard it, a waste of $125. I can't afford to replace it. I couldn't possibly sit outdoors completely unprotected for so many hours, and not just because I'd have to forego using my Chromebook. My Teton 2-man pop-up has proven to be a dog-send. While Deke continued his frenzied scratching, he looked up at me and said, "You're sure taking a long time to knock down a tent you said is easy to handle." "The top is stuck like it's fused on. It won't budge," I replied in an exasperated tone of voice, and then sighed. "I'll have to go upstairs and get on the web to find a video that shows me why I'm having this snafu." So once back hovel, I loaded a 4-minute video about this particular model. And that is when I was reminded of a tiny latch, which I just forgot about after knocking it down the previous evening, with ease. You just give the latch a flick and it instantly collapses. All you have to do is fold the fiberglass rods in on themselves and roll up the tent. Deke asked me to take this bag with shoes in it and store it upstairs for a day or 2. It was then I noticed Flacco's sweater was removed, but not Lucky's. "Why did you take off her sweater, Deke?" I queried. "It's not that cold out," he answered. "So why didn't you also remove Lucky's?" I was genuinely curious, wondering if he had a malicious streak about my relationship with Flacco, that he perceived I love her more than the brother. Not true, because I love them both infinitely. So he caused her to shiver at night while Lucky remained warm. I saw Flacco shirtless several times before on chilly nights while Lucky remained wearing his, and that is how my suspicion was aroused. "Well, let me take Lucky's sweater upstairs, too," I declared to test his reaction. He simply shrugged his shoulders, said okay, and so I did. Perhaps my suspicion was spot on, and Deke agreed with me, just to cover his sorry, sadistic ass. After stashing the tent and its contents back hovel, I returned downstairs to pick up his bulky speaker that he had asked me to charge tonight. It was then he complained. "Stop putting so much cardboard down. It's why neighbors complain. Call the cops." I told him that's not even the half of it, because there's often a ton of junk strewn about that is far worse than cardboard. And besides, I always discard the cardboard I lay down when done with it, unless other people show up and use it for their own comfort, in which case they are responsible, not me. I'm certainly not going to wait until they leave hours later at 3, 4, 5 a.m. and pick up after them. Having said that, I collected all the cardboard, 6 sheets in total, and proceeded to carry them around the corner to dump them by the recycling bins. But some heavy-set homeless fellow appeared out of the blue and said, "Hey, you need that cardboard anymore. Can I have it?" I turned to him and said, "Sure, I was just going to throw it away. Here you go." He then took a closer look and stepped back with palms out and said, "Oh, that's not the type I need. Sorry." I had no idea what he meant, but Deke did, who addressed him. "Yeah, I figured it's not what you want." I will make a point of asking Deke next time I see him what all this cardboard type is about. I'm guessing it has to do with different uses by street people, though right now I can't imagine what. Let's see, there's glossy coated cardboard. Why would that make a difference? Before we went our own ways, I told Deke when I delivered his charged speaker at the front gate late last night. "Know what I feel like these days, Deke?" "No, what?" he queried. Like I have a regular job and work 70 hours a week for no pay, and the boss is a prick, though I love what I do, I replied. Who's the boss? He queried again. You, I retorted. He chuckled, waved his hand, and departed. I hope he got the hint.